Hello, Alex. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, true faith. So that's how do you describe what true faith is?
It's a platform for Newcastle United fans to write predominantly about their football club. We're a fan media organisation, so we do what we can to amplify fan voices. It sounds a little bit corporate. It's not. We just like to give football fans and Newcastle fans the opportunity to talk and write about their football club. So we have a print fanzine. We're the only print Newcastle United fanzine left, which is a shame. We have a podcast, a website, a YouTube channel. Don't really do much on YouTube, but hoping to change that. We're kind of cover all bases for Newcastle fans, we think.
Yeah, that's how the podcast is how I came across you and the team. But you put the podcast on YouTube as well, don't you?
Just started doing that, the last couple.
Good, it's a good idea. So how did you get involved with the trust then?
With the Supporters Trust,
yeah.
So I was asked to come to a couple of meetings back in 2017 or 18. Then I was asked if I would be co-opted onto the board. And whilst the lads who were keeping it going, as it were doing a great job, I just felt it maybe needed a bit of a relaunch in 2019. Right. And I took over as the chair of the trust. We kind of went from ground zero, as it were. We didn't really have any members. We didn't have a bank account or a website or anything like that. So kind of almost started from scratch. And that was my role in building it up from there.
So what is the aim of the trust and what does the trust do?
Yeah, so the Supporters Trust, it exists for two reasons. One, to hopefully one day own a part of Newcastle United and make it into a fan-owned club. That's not going to happen whilst in the Premier League, but it could certainly happen if the club falls through the leagues, which it might. Also to provide a formal platform for supporters to be able to communicate with the club. Because the trust is strictly one member, one vote, me, who relaunched it, was the chair, I don't have any more say in how things are done on a voting level as any other member. It's only £1 to join. The first thing I did was slash the membership fee from £10 to £1. And we exist to try and communicate with the football club in a structured manner. So, we think football clubs and actually Premier League rules and EFL rules dictate football clubs have to try and open dialogue with supporters on important issues to do with supporters, and that can range from the running of the club right at the top to ticketing policies to match day experience, all sorts of things. And what the trust does, it tries to present itself as a formal constituted organisation that the club can rely on to do so. So if you went and spoke to one group of fans, they can have differences of opinion. That's what football fans do. But the trust, because it's open and democratic, everyone who represents the trust at board level now is elected. We hold elections every single year. We have the biggest ever supporters elections in the UK. Nearly 6,000 people voted in the last election. So from the club point of view, this is the idea anyway, at least they're knowing that they're speaking to people that actually represent other supporters rather than anyone who's self-appointed or has, for whatever reason wants to do it. We're trying to present ourselves as that body that the club can talk to.
So are there other clubs that have done something similar to being quite successful with it that you know of?
Yes. Nearly every football club now has a supporters trust. Certainly every club in the Premier League, I think, apart from West Brom, and the ones that don't are getting there. There's some trusts that have been going 20 years, some trusts have come to the scene more recently, but the way that fan communication is structured, particularly with the Premier League, is all Premier League clubs are instructed to work with their supporters trust for the reasons that I've already gone into. There's different levels of success. You've got Liverpool and Spirit of Shankly have put tremendous pressure on their owners and organised walkouts, been very prominent on keeping ticket pricing affordable, or some tickets affordable and accessible for local people in the Liverpool area. Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust, fantastic relationship with their football club. They were heavily involved in fan aspects of their new stadium, how it would work for fans, allocation of tickets, that kind of thing. There are different levels. Some football clubs are better at engaging than others. So I wouldn't necessarily blame the trust. Well, I definitely wouldn't blame the trusts at a lot of them. But I think Brighton are a really shining example of a trust that speaks to the people who run the club at the very highest level. We're able to give feedback, and it's kind of it's like a partnership between owner and supporters.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an outlier. That's not how it is at most clubs. Then you've got support, Portsmouth Supporters Trust, Save Portsmouth. Portsmouth will go on bust without their supporters trust. The fans got to put in £2,000 each to save the club. You've got even Hearts in Scotland, their supporters trust is buying the football club for £12 million. So there are lots of examples up and down the country of supporters and supporters trusts working together to create better football clubs.
Yeah, so it's like almost like a more formal direct connection to the club.
Very much so, yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So what sort of communication do you ever have with the club, if any?
Yeah, so I mean, the club have a support in the Premier League anyway. Most clubs would have a supporters liaison officer, whose job it is to work with support organisations. In Newcastle, that job is shared by the head of media or the head of communication. So he has two hats on. And I mean, personally, I've worked with the club on fan initiatives, like we started Gallagher Flags a few years ago, which were flag displays in the ground. That was great, and that I stepped away from that, and it continued under a different guise and got even better. We set up a singing section at the Gallagher in the ground for about 300 fans who wanted to stand and sing. So that's some really positive examples where the club did work with supporters. Unfortunately, that's probably the limit of it. The club used to hold this formal engagement process called the fan. What was it called? It had a city name anyway, but I can't remember what it was. Fans Forum. And as the trust, I work with the club to try and develop that and improve on it, because for a number of reasons. And so we are supposed to speak to Lee Charnley, who's the MD, several times a year. That's been knocked on the head by the pandemic, though I would argue that it didn't necessarily need to be knocked on the head by the pandemic.
It's a good excuse, isn't it?
The new chair, Greg, is trying to, reopen that corridor. The club are supposed to hold different focus groups each year for ticket and match day experience, community engagement, and people from the trust and some other fans will go along, speak to people who work at the club and give feedback and try and work on initiatives together. So there is something there. It's in the Premier League rulebook that clubs have to do this. It's not an optional thing.
That's good. That's really good. So how long have you been involved with it now, the trust?
So what were we, 2021? So you're looking at 2 or 3 years.
Okay, fairly recent then. It seems to be going well, because I've heard a lot over the last two or 3 years. I've heard a lot more about it than I was previously. So,
yeah, well, it's the biggest trust in the country now. 14,000 paying members. It's £2 to join, because you join for £1 and then you remember for life. That £1 buys you a share in the trust. You remember for life, and then it's £1 a year annual subscription. But yeah, so 14,000 members. You should tell your family, your friends. Gives you a vote in elections. It gives us a voice when the club was, the speculation of a lot of takeover stuff last year. We kind of spoke to the world's media as a trust with the voice of 14,000 behind us. It gives you a legitimate voice, particularly on a lot of issues that fans agree on. I think, we did a survey of our members, and 97% of them supported the takeover. And while each individual fan might not agree, we were able to kind of push back against the narrative that some media outlets were putting out there that Newcastle fans were divided. Well, that simply wasn't the case. That doesn't mean everyone agrees, but it simply wasn't the case. And if we didn't have that voice behind us and that kind of membership, we wouldn't have been listened to. But because we did, we were able to do stuff like that. We're also able to speak to Richard Masters directly about the takeover. No one else managed that. No journalist managed that.
That's good.
That's not me doing that. That or anyone else on the board. That's the strength of the ordinary membership.
Yeah.
So there is strength in numbers here. So anyone listening to this who's a Newcastle United fan, for £1 a year, I think there's worse things you could spend £1 on.
Yeah. So the True Faith podcast that you do, which is initially how I came across you guys, do you find is that where you have to be sort of balanced, or do you feel like do you have to hold back sometimes on what you'd really like to say, or do you just go for it?
No, we don't hold back. I think fan media, compared to the professionals and journalists who do it, you've got to just say what you think. That's why people listen. There's very little holding back. We try and present a fan's view of things, and if you with your mates in a pub, you wouldn't hold back. So that's the kind of thing that we're doing.
That is what I like about it. But it's not. I mean, I've come across a lot of Newcastle United podcasts, and a lot of them are just people just ranting and raving and swearing and just I feel yours is quite balanced. Although you do, you can't help but be critical at the moment. But I feel you guys are quite. I don't know. As a group, especially, I like Charlotte. I like the way what she adds to it. But as a group, Norman's the one who's just. But I think you guys. I don't know. I just every week now I look forward to that. Whether we win or we lose, well, mainly when we lose, I just look forward to what these guys are going to say because quite often I agree.
I appreciate that, and I'm pleased you like it. We obviously do it for other people's enjoyment. You know, we do try hard to be analytical and be serious, and I agree with you that there's a lot of fan media that, whilst I don't want to criticise anyone out there who does their own thing, and good luck to them, I do feel sometimes, you know, particularly people in positions of authority, look at football fans as like overly emotional, unable to analyse properly, always needing something to be angry or kick off about. So we try to just be a little bit more, you know, down to earth, and make sure that we're actually, you know, hopefully you and others are listening for the analysis, not for the, you know, temper tantrums or something like that.
No, I really enjoy it. So, what's the routine with the podcast every week? Is it just one? Do you just do one a week?
So we'll do a free one after every game.
Yeah.
So if there's 2 games, there's 2. We occasionally put some bonus stuff out there. You know, some old season reviews. We have a Patreon platform, so we do paid content behind the paywall, which is 4 or 5 extra podcasts a week. That would normally include a match preview. That'll include like a general Premier League show. And then we'll do some kind of tactic shows. We'll do all sorts on there, and we launched that really because we used to put more out for free, but because one of the reasons I started the podcast was there were a lot of Newcastle podcasts out there, and they were fine and they were good, but there wasn't any at the time back in 2013-14 for people who were at the games regularly. Yeah. That doesn't make them worse because they weren't at the games, but I was going to games home and away, and I was listening to things thinking, you know, if someone had been at the game, they would like understand
it's a very
something.
Specific point of view, isn't it? It's more.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I think there's a bit more validity to it if you've actually been and you go regularly, versus you know, watching it on TV or watching Match of the Day.
Yeah. So I mean, that was getting expensive because we, you know, going every single game home and away. I mean, I went to a lot of away games anyway, but you know, now I would be driving to Everton on a Wednesday night or, you know, whatever. Because we felt like we had to provide that point of view, so we launched the Patreon to support those costs.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you know, we've no interest in making money out of this personally. Yeah. Purely a cost covering exercise.
Just allow you to carry on doing it. It's expensive pursuit.
Yeah, and to say same with the equipment as well. You know, we used to get criticised a lot for sound quality, rightly so, because we're amateurs. Everyone starts out as an amateur, really, don't they? And so over time, we've spent a lot of money on mics. You know, we used to have an office. We paid for an office in Gosforth in Newcastle to record from pre-pandemic. Obviously, you know, pandemic's knocked that on the head, which is a shame because we really enjoyed doing that, and kind of made sure we had the best equipment out there. And again, that's the nice thing is that was all paid for by people who listened to the show, so that like that's really in a way that they were putting something in and hopefully getting something back out of it as well.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I normally only do this in a studio face to face, but obviously can't do that now. But it does help you get your setup in order. I think you guys must have really nailed down your Zoom setup and your remote recording setup.
Yeah, so now we use a program called StreamYard actually, which is really good. I'd recommend it to anyone. Not too expensive as well for an annual subscription. But yeah, it is definitely one of the things the pandemic has done, because you know there was 4 or 5 of us live in Newcastle, and 3 or 4 guys down in London. So you were kind of recording both places. But the pandemic has brought us all together to record regularly because now everyone has to do it remotely.
Yeah. No, I enjoy tuning in every week. You just feel, I don't know, I live in Cumbria now and I have for over 20 years, but it's my connection back to Newcastle. I feel like I've just been to the game. Obviously, usually at the moment I've watched it on TV and then I listen to the podcast. And then most of the times it's like after the recent results anyway. But I don't know. Are you a Bruce out now? Have you got to that point?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I think I gave him a chance. I think a lot of fans gave him a chance.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a chance he necessarily deserved based on his managerial career, and that's probably one of the great frustrations of a lot of Newcastle fans is the way he talks about the support in the club and about pressure and about how it was always going to be like this. And well, actually, although a lot of people walked away, maybe 5,000 season ticket holders didn't renew. That's only 10% of people. The other 90% were behind you and behind the club. And I don't think he's repaid that faith at all. And to be on 21 points from 22 games with the squad at his disposal is just not good enough. And unfortunately, I'd love to be proved wrong, but there is nothing at all from his managerial career, 20 years in the game to date, that suggests it's going to get any better than this.
No.
He has a win rate in the Premier League of 28% across 20 years, and that's what his win rate is now. So all we're seeing is kind of a leveling out of the team. Yeah,
it's just more of the same. I get to the point where I feel like I've given him a chance. I've given him every opportunity to try and change my mind, or just give me some hope. But I just feel like, I don't know. I always before he came, I always associated Steve Bruce with avoiding relegation, keeping your team in the league, and not with like pushing for Europe or signing big players and big contracts. I just did not associate that with Bruce, and he hasn't changed that opinion at all in the last year and a half.
No. I mean, 60. I think the game against Southampton will be a 60th league game. That's in the Premier League. That's a good stretch. There's a lot of managers don't get them out of time. So I think we've had time to see what he can bring. Yeah,
he kept going on about this work in progress, but it just if anything, it's dropped off rather than gone up. There was a period where you thought, oh, maybe, but just I don't think he can take us any further. There's nothing he can do, nothing else he can do. I just think his time's come.
No, I totally agree.
But I don't think he's not going to walk away. He's not the kind of guy. He's never going to walk away, is he? And under Mike Ashley, is he going to sack him? Is he going to do anything?
No, not till it's too late. That's what history teaches us.
Yeah. So I don't know how it's going to. I mean, if for all intents and purposes, we're in a relegation battle now.
Oh, fully. I think we're joined 17th, aren't we? So if you're joined 17th and not in a relegation battle, what are you?
But do you think this Graham Jones is going to make any difference long term?
No, I think that the new formation that he seemed to have brought in, though the manager says that had nothing to do with him, is better than what it was. But ultimately, Newcastle just aren't a very good team. And if you look at who they've lost to in the past week, they've lost to Leeds at home, they've lost to Crystal Palace at home. Leeds and Palace are bottom half of the table Premier League teams. So if you can't beat the bottom half teams at home, who can you beat?
But does part of you not think a better manager will be able to get more out of this squad of players?
Oh, 100%. I don't doubt it. I think there are managers out there, not even attached to other clubs. People like Eddie Howe, Marco Silva, who are proper managers who've managed at the highest level, who would instantly get a reaction. Yeah.
So, it's our team. We're stuck with them. There's not much we can do about it. What was the first game you ever went to? Can you remember?
Yeah, it was a good one. It was Newcastle 5, Nottingham Forest 0, 97. It was the same day that Newcastle qualified for the Champions League, and Sunderland and Middlesbrough both got relegated on that day from the Premier League. So in terms of it's just all been downhill from there, really. False advertising.
Yeah, the first game I ever took my missus to was when we beat Sunderland 5-1.
Wow.
And I just remember turning to her going, it's not like this every week. I start. How old are you?
32.
I'm almost 40. My first game, I can't really remember it, but I know my uncle started taking me just before Kevin Keegan took over.
Right.
And we were shockingly bad. I mean, languishing in the bottom of the second division. And then I didn't go for a while. Then Kevin Keegan became the manager, and I was like, who's Kevin Keegan? I was only like, I don't know, 8 or 9. So then I went a few months after 6 months after he took over, and it was like a different, I don't know, it was like that was the first time I was aware that the whole city was just mad about football. Because before, it was like, yeah, should we go? Should we not go? And then after that, it was like, we're going. So I feel lucky to have experienced that, and then Bobby Robson as well. Probably the two best periods in my lifetime. Whether we'll get anything like that again, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think the takeover will happen, or do you think it's? Do you think it's not?
It's a really tough one, isn't it? Because you want to believe it'll happen, and there's a lot of fans desperate for it to happen. But I mean, it's over a year now since the story first broke.
Yeah.
So why would it happen now if it hasn't happened already? You know, you read a lot in the press about Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Middle East and stuff, and it just seems so far removed from some people buying our football club that are struggled to engage with it really. And you know, I think there's a little bit of a, what's the right word here, an industry out of it, if that makes sense. That, and it's in a lot of people's interests to keep it running as long as possible because so many people are interested and want to know about it. But ultimately, you know, me and you are sat here talking and the club's still owned by Mike Ashley. Every day that it doesn't happen, almost I lose a bit of faith.
Yeah, it's just so, I don't know, because there was a point where it felt like it was going to happen. And you're like, oh, happy days. And then it just, because they made a bid and then it just went quiet, didn't it? Was that when lockdown first started? It was around about that time, wasn't it?
It was I think it was April the 2nd or 3rd. It really broke that the Premier League it had reached that level, that Premier League level where it had never got past the media before, but it was real this time. So it's, you know, you're getting on for what's it, like 9 months or something.
It could only happen to us.
yeah, definitely.
What was the last game you went to before it all went tits up?
So been West Brom away, which was like it just that was the Wednesday, and the lockdown was announced the following Tuesday, maybe.
Right.
So that was the FA Cup 5th round. It was a really good night. 5,500 Newcastle fans there. Took a couple of days off work down there with my friends. It's different lifetime now, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Considering what we're going through at the minute. But yeah, that was a nice one to get in. How about yourself?
I haven't been to a game for a couple of years now, but when I lived there, I used to go quite a bit. But it's just strange. I kind of almost got used to it. We've kind of got used to it. No fans now, and like thinking like Callum Wilson never played in front of our fans.
It's weird.
It's just a shame. I bet Steve Bruce is probably glad there's been no fans in there.
Oh, if there was fans there, he would be sacked. It would be impossible. It would be the noise would probably, that would be the loudest noise, would be people singing about him probably. But I feel sorry for players like Callum Wilson because it's like part of the reason why I imagine people would what they think about is St James's Park full. It's at 3 o'clock kickoff or a night game under the floodlights. It's kind of like what they think about. But all he's had to do is go up to the camera. Yeah.
But so have they made? I saw you tweeted before. Have they let some players go who've been hanging on?
Yeah, Ashraf Lazar, who was signed by Rafa when he first came, I think he's made 9 appearances in 4 years, a couple of loans. They've agreed to terminate his contract, which means they've paid him money early to leave.
There's no way out. You can't avoid that, can you?
No, I think that transfer window in 2016 goes down as one of the best in the club's history in terms of Dwight Gale, Matt Ritchie coming in. Players like that, Kieran Clark was an absolute bargain, but there was a couple of horror shows in there as well with Lazar and Matt Sells.
Yeah, because we've got a couple of players who are still hanging around, just getting a wage.
Yeah, so there was him. There was Henry Saive, who was signed by Steve McLaren back in the very start of 2016, and then there's Christian Atsu, who did great under Rafa. I thought it was cheap player came in, but he's not wanted by Bruce, so he's found him and Saive found themselves outside of the Premier League squad. So even if there was injuries, they couldn't play.
It's just odd that there's just players just banished. It's like solitary confinement. Off you go, and then you forget about them. I remember there was a couple of them. Oh yeah, I forgot they were. Or you go, are they still here?
Yeah, no, it's crazy, isn't it?
Does that happen a lot at other clubs? Do you think, or is it just us?
No, it happens. You get change of managers come in and they don't fancy a player, and sometimes the player's been signed on wages that no one else will pay, and you can understand it from the player's point of view because you only get one career, and if they're on 40 grand a week and no one else will pay them more than 10, it's financial suicide to move. So they end up trying to do things to make them leave, like make them train with the kids, and all that kind of thing. So it's more common than you think.
Is that kind of what happened with Gareth Bale?
Gareth Bale, I'm not an expert on, but I believe up until last season he was fine. He was in the team. Obviously, suffered a lot of injuries. I think this season the manager Zidane said, you aren't going to play. You have to leave. We'll play you with the kids if you don't leave.
So he went on loan to Spurs. Such a strange.
Yeah, but I mean, you could pay me 400 grand a week to play with the kids. I'd do it if pushed.
So it's Saturday's game. Do you think that's probably the biggest game of the season so far?
Oh, massive game for Steve Bruce. I can't see how he loses and keeps his job, because the fact that Chelsea and Man United away are after that, which are almost guaranteed defeats, particularly under this manager, it means he would be going. I mean, we've lost 10 of the last 13 games. That would become, you lose the next 3, that becomes 13 of 16. We are. He would be on 22 points in 25 games. It would just be relegation all over it. So it's a massive game. I don't know if you agree.
I do. Yeah, I think it's like there's a lot riding on it. But at the same time, I just can't. I don't think he's going to get sacked no matter what happens. I mean, what do you think would happen if we just kept losing and losing, went into the bottom 3? Do you think he would actually get pushed or not?
Yeah, I think he would get sacked. I think the players might have something to do with it as well. I think if you keep losing, the players don't like games, and the players can get rid of the manager. Fans can only get rid of the manager if they're in the ground.
Yeah.
But the club and Mike Ashley are desperate not to get relegated, which seems like a strange thing to say when they've employed Steve Bruce. But I don't even think it would take falling into the bottom 3. I think the form is so bad. Fulham had won last night. He would have been under serious pressure, and that's the thing with Newcastle at the minute. It's as much about what Fulham do and potentially Sheffield United and West Brom as much as what we do.
Yeah, we're always looking over our shoulders. It's just we've just kind of got used to it every season now. I mean, when was the last time we finished in the top half? Was it Rafa when we finished 10th? Was that?
It was, and that was a great season, but it was a little bit of a false position because it was the lowest ever points total to finish in the top 10. 44 points, or 43 points. And we ended up finishing with 44 points the following season and finishing the 3 places lower. But in terms of a genuine good season, Pardew finished 10th from 13-14, but again, that was really toxic because we sold Kabay, the team fell apart, we were 5th or 6th when that happened. So you've got to go right back to 2011-12, we finished 5th under Pardew for the last genuinely good season in the Premier League, which is depressing because 9 seasons ago.
It is frustrating because I feel like we do have the players now to push on, finish in the top half, but Steve Bruce just seems clueless.
No, yeah, I think the squad, and that's one of the sad things about him, is that he talks down the players a lot, and I don't think that's fair at all.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to. Well, some people would argue he doesn't have a plan A, but no plan B, no or a C. Like, what was the game recently? Was it Fulham when someone got sent off for Fulham?
Yeah, that's right.
And we ended up drawing 1-1, but he didn't change anything. It was as if we hadn't even noticed that there was no we'll take him off. Some managers, you'd see the cogs turn and they'd do tactical things, if not straight away, at some point during the game, to try and tweak things to make make the most of the man advantage. We just seem to we'll just eke out a draw.
Yeah, it's maddening as a supporter, and the way that after that game he could have come out and said, "Oh well, I got that one wrong."
Yeah,
but he doesn't. He comes out and says, "Well, I did great. The players did great. Yeah. We're unlucky. We weren't unlucky. Fulham were the better team and still should have won with 10 men." That's that kind of disconnect between reality, and if someone's too proud, assuming it's pride, to come out and admit their faults, how are you supposed to improve? If Steve Bruce, if we lose on Saturday or we get a draw, you'll come out and say, or even like against Palace and Leeds, we'll get beat again, but played not terrible. He'll come out and say it was good, it was fine, everything's all right. When the likes of me and you and everyone else who watches the team knows it's not fine.
Yeah, you just kind of like, hello, is anyone home? I don't know do you think is someone telling him to talk like that, or is that just his way?
No, that's his way. He's done it throughout his career. When he was under serious pressure at Sunderland and Villa, he did the usual thing. He turned on supporters. He belittled them. He talked up his side. He pretended everything was fine. Even after he got sacked by Sunderland and Villa, he still had the audacity in the media to say that everything would have been fine if he wasn't sacked. And it's like, well, look at where Villa are now, Steve, compared to where you had them. It's chalk and cheese.
So who are the other guys on your podcast team? Just for people who don't know.
Yeah, fine. It's so there's me and my mates from school basically started it. You've got Cy Campbell, Michael Collin, Ben Wade, a lad called Andy Bolland joined. We all went to school in Newcastle together. Got season tickets together. It was kind of our mates thing, and from there, it's grown a little bit. First guy to join is Norman Riley, as I said, who's an exiled Geordie in living in London, but from Gateshead. he actually got in touch because he speaks many languages, but he speaks Spanish particularly well. So when we first got Rafa, he was able to do translations from Spanish radio, which is massively helpful. Obviously, he's a lovely guy, very passionate.
I thought you were going to say you can lip read on the pitch side, see what Rafa's really saying.
Maybe if we weren't stuck in like the singing section, he might have been able to. Yeah. It wasn't a great view from the back of the Gallagher. We'll have Charlotte Robson, who I went to school with, and she just got in touch with me randomly and started chatting football, and I realised that she had a lot to say. She's very good. She's a very confident person in terms of presenting, and she's excellent. And then there's a guy called Chris Shipman who does them occasionally. He was a pal of Norman's. And I think that's everyone, unless I'm doing anyone a disservice. Oh, yeah, Adam Widgerton. I used to hold live events for True Faith, and we would hold live events if it wasn't the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we did a few at the Tyneside Irish Centre in Newcastle. So it was great night. Sold them out, 200 people there each time.
That's really good.
And he won a meal or like a lunch with Rafa Benitez because we're raising money for charity, and Rafa and people at the football club very kindly donated their time to our cause to raffle off, and Adam won that, and we got chatting, and he was already doing some other YouTube stuff himself, and he was able to speak very well and very eloquently about football. So yeah, he joined the team, and that's us.
That's really good. Yeah, it's a shame. We're getting a bit sick of the situation we're in now because it's stopping you from doing so many things, so many ideas. He's like, no, can't do that.
No, it's brutal, isn't it?
Do you listen to other podcasts outside of football, or is it all football for you?
No, I because I spend so much time doing Newcastle football stuff, so I don't really want to listen to any other Newcastle football podcasts. Not because they're bad, it's just because it would just be incessant. I spend enough time listening. I mean, I'm not on every podcast on paper, and so I listen to all of our stuff. Right. But I listen to a lot of political podcasts. I'm big into my history, right. And there's override between those two topics, and also I love me cricket as well, so I listen to a lot of the cricket podcasts as well.
So you got into podcasting quite early, 2013, 14. That's quite early for most your average person to start.
Yeah, there was already a True Faith podcast at the time done by other people. So we started outside of the True Faith brand. They stopped. They'd been going since 2009. Taylor and Bestie, who are very successful at it and really popular, and they're both still podcasts now, another Newcastle podcast, which is great. So yeah, but when you first start off, you're really just talking to yourself.
Yeah,
because
there is no audience when you first start.
There isn't an audience, so it's nice to think back to those days, and we're lucky on a good week now to get 5,000-6,000 people listening.
Yeah. On
a really good week, we get above 10,000, up to 15,000 people, and it's nice to be able to remember that. We do have some listeners actually who were part of the original 30 or 50 when we were getting 30 or 50 people a week, and you get a few comments on Twitter and stuff like that saying I've been listening since the very first one, and that's always nice to touch base with them about that.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about it is because obviously I'm not in Newcastle anymore, but it's just like a connection to home. I like that. But I just like it. It's like a valid, balanced sort of analysis of what just happened, and that's kind of what I want. Especially, like I say, from people who were there or who've watched it. I kind of miss that side of things. So that's how I discovered it. Just search for Newcastle. There's a few other ones. I like the Chronicles one as well. Everything's black and white. I like that one because they have some interesting guests on there as well. But you guys are probably my number one, I would say.
Thank you very much.
I think I've been subscribed for about 2-3 years now.
All right.
But so how many episodes have you done now? You must have done a lot.
Over 300, yeah. I don't know how many it is. I ended up hiding the first one back in 2014.
I was going to say I searched on my thing and it only goes down so far. And I was like, hang on.
Yeah, it's because the sound quality was so bad on them. It was awful. It's just not worth having them there for people to listen. And also, we were much worse at it. Much worse. You get better at things as you go, don't you? So we're all really nervous at the start, and that's when sometimes we have guests on, or for whatever reason, or people who aren't on as a podcast guest, if they're on for the trust or something, sometimes people are nervous, and it's entirely normal and natural if you haven't done something before to be. So everyone's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, Yeah, I get that when I have guests on mine. When I used to be in the studio, it'd take 10, 15 minutes before they kind of relax, before they really start getting into it. They get past that nervous start, and then they just start talking. Sometimes I don't even tell them we've started recording. We just start talking, and before you know it, we're in.
Yeah.
So, do you have many outside guests then who are not part of your normal crew?
We've had a few. We have a lot of the Northeast Press Pack on journalists. Right. They're always very, very illuminating. They've got great contacts, speak very well of the club, very passionate. Most of them are Newcastle fans, which helps.
Yeah.
So we've had them. We've had a lot of ex-players on over the years. We have a great relationship with Keith Gillespie and Andy Griffin now, who do shows behind the paywall, former Newcastle players.
That's good.
We've had politicians on. We've done podcasts with other podcasts of other football clubs up and down the country, and we do that still on the Patreon platform. So yeah, it's nice to get a different viewpoint on, isn't it, sometimes?
Have you met many of the players over the years?
Not really, no. When we did Gallagher Flags, we had a great relationship with the club, and we ran live events for them as well, and they were good enough to sign Paul Dummett and Matt Ritchie down, which is fantastic, both really good lads. But yeah, no, the players tend to be a little bit separate. There are some clubs that do player interviews with podcasts and manager interviews with podcasts, which is great. I think it's fantastic, but Newcastle's just not that type of club.
No. So what is your opinion on Joe Linton now that you've experienced him for long enough overall?
Yeah, he's brilliant, to be honest with you. One of my favourite ever players, best footballer in the league. No, he's not. He's rubbish, and he's not good enough. And it pains me to say it because I'm sure he's a nice bloke.
Yeah.
But he's a vanity signing. Rafa Benitez told him that he wasn't good enough, or certainly not for £40 million. And I think one of the most important things about Joe Linton, if Joe Linton had cost £5 million, he would have played a tenth of the games that he's played for Newcastle, because they're desperate for him to succeed. And we're all desperate for him to succeed.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen. He's not good enough.
He's had his moments, but in a way, I do feel sorry for him because he wasn't. I'm pretty sure he wasn't signed to be a lone striker up front on his own, considering he played mainly on the left previously. It didn't seem to make sense. It seemed.
Yeah, but then I've seen him play on the left, and he's even worse. So it's a tough one, isn't it?
But yeah, to buy him based on what, I don't know, someone watching him, to then stick him up front on his own, I just don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, who knows how they've come to that decision, how they managed to. I mean, this is for Newcastle United, a notoriously stingy club in the transfer market, to part with so much money for so little, that heads should have rolled for that, really, but they haven't.
But I mean, do you know how long a contract did he sign? Was it 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, it'll have been 5 years, so he's here till 2024. Counting down the days.
I just don't think there's a role for him. Like the recent Everton, he wasn't even in the squad for that. Well, he didn't play at all on that one, did he? Yeah.
No surprise. Best performance of the season when he was nowhere near the pitch.
So maybe they just had to admit that it's a failure.
Yeah, and I think you touched on before, players who you can't get rid of. He's going to be one. He'll be one of the club's highest earners, and no one's going to take him for that money. No chance.
It just seems like there is nowhere he would fit in the team. Nowhere.
No, not in the Premier League anyway. I can't see it.
No, that's true. He might have gone on loan somewhere like a Championship, like Sunderland, or if they came up. Imagine that. Then he would score against us. But so who do you think is our core players now who we can't do without?
Well, we're lucky we've got two goalkeepers who are excellent.
Yeah.
I think Martin Dubravka needs to come back in the team because he is better. I don't think anyone could deny the fact he's better, and I think we need our best team. Caldolo's been brilliant.
Yeah.
I think Kieran Clark's solid, really dependable. I'm pleased he's back in the team.
Me too.
And we struggle a little bit in central midfield, and then you've got Callum Wilson, Almiron, and St. Maximin are three really, really good players. That, we talked about earlier, the quality of this squad and the fact it's underperforming. There's three players there who would get into a lot of teams in this division.
Yeah, I almost felt like when that Graham Jones first came in, when he changed things, it seems like he's just said, "Why are we defending? We should be going forward. We should be looking forward instead of looking back." And that just seems to me like a Steve Bruce thing, to just defend for 90 minutes. Let's try and not concede a goal.
Yeah, and would quite often fail to do that. So
yeah,
stuffed, aren't you?
But I don't know. I do have a little bit of hope with I don't know the way we've changed the system. I know we lost that last game, but it did overall feel like we were playing better than we've played previously when we've lost. That's the only thing I will say.
Definitely, and I like the fact that it's given you some hope. I look at it the other way. When we play badly very often and get beat, so when you play well, you have to win and take points. Because if you get beat when you play well, you're getting relegated. And I said this in the last podcast. Mm-hmm. The relegations that me and you have seen in 2009 and 2016. One of the hallmarks of them that I'll always remember is I could, reel off a list of games from those seasons that we really should have won, we deserved to win, but we threw away leads and we threw away points. That's what teams who get relegated do. They play bad very often and lose, fine, but then they play well and they also lose. So that kind of concerns me even more. Though I do understand that it's much better watching us play well and get beat than play bad and get beat.
Yeah, I just hope we can continue this, because it seems to be a change of mentality within the team of like a more, let's go forward instead of going back. Because it used to infuriate me with have a throw-in right at their end, and we'd end up going straight back to the goalkeeper. That happened numerous times. Rather than, or someone would be in the middle of the field and there were no options, so they would just go back. Seems to be there's been less of that. So I'm hoping that we just stick to this change, this mentality change that we seem to have had, and just work on it and try and turn those draws into wins or defeats into draws, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Need to start drawing some first.
Yeah, exactly.
But you are right though, because it gives you a little bit of hope as a fan that, all right, well, it didn't work. Well, we can tweak a couple of things, we can get better, and next game it'll be better. Whereas you correctly say, when we just went and took a 2-0 defeat as a good result, well, how can you improve on that?
Yeah, and Steve Bruce saying, "Oh, I was pleased with certain things today. I got a lot out of today's game," and we were like, "Well, we didn't." There was just some games there was just nothing. And rather than just be honest, he just continues with this, almost like a politician. They've got this speech. And they just say, you ask them a question, and they just say the same sort of thing over and over again. It's infuriating sometimes.
No, definitely.
But I don't know. So, do you think? I don't think we will go down. I think it'll be close, but I don't think we will. Do you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I still don't take any pleasure in that. Finishing 16th or 17th should still be a sackable offence for the manager. But you are right. The fact, Fulham have been playing really well for ages. They played really well, like you brought up before, when it's St James's Park. I've seen them play Tottenham. I've seen them play Leicester, West Brom play really well in those games. Play Man United play really well, but they lost all those games.
Yeah,
and it goes back to what I was saying before. The fact that they're playing well and still not winning. Well, if they're playing well and still not winning, what are they supposed to do to win a game? And with the gap being 7 points or whatever it is at the minute, and we play them last day of the season, funnily enough. So let's hope it's settled by then. But yeah, we will probably have enough about us to be okay, I imagine. Purely based on other teams, not based on anything we do.
Yeah. But it's like, how can we go from what happened to Everton to then what happened next? There's moments in the game where you think, right, even when we went a goal down, I was thinking, this is a test of this new way we're playing. I was actually still quite positive, but it just kind of fizzled out.
No, it did, didn't it? And it makes you think that Everton were bad. It wasn't that we were brilliant, and we were much, much better. Best performance under Steve Bruce for me. But when you see the next game, like you correctly say, like it being a good test, and failing that test, you just think, did Everton have an off day? Did we catch them when they weren't that up for it?
Everton went and won the next game, didn't they? Did they win?
Yeah, they beat Leeds. Yeah, good result, yeah.
So, I don't know. I just hope that there is a sort of, that Everton result has, within at least the players, given them enough to keep going, not get too disheartened. But though we have got some really tough games coming up.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the fixtures coming up are brutal, really.
You just, I was looking at them last night going, Jesus, it's going to be grim. But then you never know. Steve Bruce does have a habit of pulling out results when he really needs them.
He does, spot on. Every time it's looked really grim, he's managed. This Saturday at Everton being a great example.
Yeah.
If he'd have lost that game, the fan base was already at, mutinous levels. But then this is the problem, isn't it? When you need a result to save your job, it's not long until the next one. You got to keep doing it again, and can he keep doing it?
He's run out of those, hasn't he?
Yeah, so that's why this Saturday is such a big game, because he can't lose for me. He can't lose.
No, but if he does, I don't think he'll get sacked.
I think if Fulham were to win and we were to lose, I think he'd get sacked, and that's a big if.
Who would be the person responsible for making that decision right now? It's not Mike Ashley, is it?
Well, it's supposed to be Lee Charnley, and to be honest with you, I think it would be up to Lee Charnley. I think they would back his judgment on it.
Right.
Would back his call. He would have to run it by Ashley and the people Ashley employs to keep an eye on things. But I think it would be Lee Charnley's call, yeah.
Which brings up the question, who would be the replacement?
Yeah, well, Eddie Howe is the obvious one. Out of work with some of the players. I think he did a great
connection. So yeah,
I think he did a great job at Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth, a club like Bournemouth, were always going to get relegated at some point. They're just too small a club. When you've got crowds of 10,000 in the Premier League, at some point you will get relegated. And I think to keep them up for 5 seasons or whatever it was.
Played some good football at times as well.
Exceptional. Played some good football, had some good finishes, some good results, some good players he brought through.
Yeah.
Good eye for a player. Ryan Fraser being a good example. Callum Wilson as well. He took all those lads to Bournemouth. So he's the obvious one. But I think the fact that they brought in Jones, you brought him up a couple of times, I think people are kind of assuming that they would at least try it with Jones for the first game or two to see how it went.
Do you think they've done that before? Steve Bruce decision? Was he involved in that, do you think?
I can't see it. I can't see Steve Bruce, with the limited resources that he has, going to his boss and saying, you know what, we need this lad at Bournemouth. We need him to come in. Will you go and get him? I just can't see it myself.
Basically said, I need help.
It might have been suggested to him. It might have been put to him and he might have agreed. But to answer your question, I don't think it was his idea.
No. It does almost undermine him, really, doesn't it? Unless they've said, either we fire you or we get someone else to help you.
And that's the thing. You can't take them to court either, because when you get sacked in a Premier League job, you get paid anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not important, is it? But yeah, or if they've put to him, we've got some budget for another coach. We're like this guy. As ever, the lack of transparency at the football club and the way that they conduct themselves brings us to these conclusions, doesn't it? Where you're always thinking, what's the real motive here?
Yeah, but I hope it works out. I mean, so far, when the media impact was good. So maybe they learned a lot from the game after that. So it could, I don't know. Southampton, like you say, there's so much riding on Southampton. It's going to tell us a lot. Either way, we're going to learn a lot from it.
Yeah, I mean, there is not a better time to play a football team, than after they've just been humiliated 9-0 for the second time in 18 months, and they've got 10 first-team players out. They've lost 4 in a row. They're a really good side. Don't get me wrong, they're a really good side.
They've got loads of unavailable players, haven't they?
It's a great opportunity for Bruce. He can't waste this.
Which makes you think, yeah. So I might be, you may be right then. If given all the circumstances, it's like almost on a plate for Bruce.
Yeah,
to get
definitely.
that wrong. I mean, it would probably have to take, like, if we played terribly and he got his tactics wrong, maybe then they would just go, this is too bad, we need to stop the rot now. And sometimes, when you say, when a team makes a managerial change, it does give them a lift, doesn't it? Just like, remember when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer first took over Man U? They won like 9 games in a row. I'm not saying we would do that, but everything changed, didn't it? Everything changed.
There's even a Newcastle example, when Graham Souness was sacked, they brought in Glenn Roeder for a couple of games, who was under 18 coach at the time, and won 10 of his 15 Premier League games, and we went from relegation battle to Europa League qualification. So it has happened. I think sometimes when a manager is so bad, like Bruce is, in my opinion, that just anyone, doesn't matter who it is, anyone comes in can get a short-term boost.
Do you think he has lost the dressing room?
I think, well, no is the easy answer, because we saw what happened at Everton, and if you've lost the dressing room, you can't do that.
True.
I think that there are a lot of players who will be unhappy with him. So it's not kind of a revolt yet, but I think if he was to turn around and try and play that back 5 again, which I looked at the stats with 2 of the last 25 Premier League games playing with the back 5. The stats are so ridiculous they hardly make sense, but they are the stats. I think he would. You would see it happen then if he tried to do that. But like I said, if we lose these next couple of games, it won't be far off, in my opinion.
No, 4 at the back. Almost 4-4-2. It just seemed like Everton. It was a bit of a surprise, but I'm just hoping, that Graham Jones is it's working. You know, even behind the scenes, it might take a while for it to actually come to fruition, but there seems to, from the outside, from the performance, it seems to be a bit of a change. Like, I'm imagining his first day is like, for God's sake, stop playing five at the back. That was the first thing he said.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I mean, it almost seems like he didn't really need to say much, but what he did say was important.
Well, I think you saw a complete change, didn't you, in terms of the approach to the game, like you referenced earlier, and they actually went out and tried to win the game. And, you know, we still played without the ball. We still played deep at times. We still defended well. It wasn't like we went out there and just attacked them non-stop. But what we did see was a plan. And I think that's why so many fans, including myself, and by the sound of it, including you, were so enthused by what they saw, which makes Tuesday's defeat that much more disappointing.
Yeah, well, it was nice to see us have so much of the ball for a change, but that was the other problem, was like not knowing what to do with it in that final third. You know, we couldn't. Everton were almost giving us a bit of our own medicine by just putting up a wall. You know what I mean? Like we used to do.
Yeah, it was a strange one because Everton are a good team with Champions League ambitions. So yeah, it was just. I mean, it was such a surprising result. Newcastle were over 10-1 for that game. So anyone who put money on it on Newcastle was quids in.
Yeah, I don't know. So I was going to ask, what are some of your like favorite games that you've been to?
I mean, I think one of the biggest ones in recent years was the 1-0 win over Man United back in 2018 when Matt Ritchie scored the winner, and Man United were going for the title under Mourinho, so they were a good team. It wasn't like they were a joke or anything like that. And I don't know, I just think the atmosphere that day, and we went into that game in the relegation zone for the first time that season. Huddersfield had won earlier on in the day, and it was just, maybe you'd agree, in my time supporting Newcastle, once we get put in that position, we don't come back.
Yeah.
You know, there's only Kevin Keegan when he first came, and then that game there, where once it's turned against us and we've hit that relegation zone, that we've actually got out of it, and to then go and play as well as we did against such a good team. You know, Martin Dubravka made his debut that day as well. To go and do what we did in that game, and the fact that the crowd were what they were, it was just a kind of, this is different. This is a different club under a different manager. We're going to be okay. The sadness about it is it was only a temporary stay of execution because the club has returned to what we all feared it was. That was a great day, and I think that for the same reason, when we were in the Championship and we went and won at Brighton on a Tuesday night, when everyone, well, a lot of fans, a lot of pundits said Brighton were better than us. They were going to win the league. They could have pulled 5 points clear of us that night. And we went and won 2-1. And again, it was Newcastle United having a massive game, and away from home in particular, and coming up with the goods. And it just felt different. It just felt like a club that, and a team that was destined to go places. And I think it was, if they kept Rafa Benitez. I firmly believe last season and this season would be a top 10 side pushing for Europe.
Yeah.
And I think as Newcastle fans, you know, I've been to lots of games that are massive. I was there at Villa Park in 2009 when we needed to win. We didn't. We got relegated. I was there at Villa Park again 7 years later when we needed to win. We didn't. We got relegated. And to go into those two games I'm talking about, when we needed to win, and to win, you kind of, it's one of those strange feelings that even though you were there and you're caught up in the moment, you appreciated the magnitude of those wins, and you appreciated what it meant, not just to the people around you, but to the whole support. So they're two big ones for me.
Those two championship seasons were brilliant. It always it just reminded you, oh, this is what it's like to be one of the best teams in the league and just play a good football, and just I don't know, it was quite refreshing in a way, even though we'd been relegated, which was horrific at the time, but it was actually quite good for a change. I don't know how you found it.
Great. No, I loved them. It's, you know, you win games every week. It's a total different mindset. I think that's the limit of them, though. I think one season winning all your games is enough. I feel like when you score a goal, it's not the same as when you score a goal in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're playing Rotherham at home and teams like that. And it's probably the same for like Man City now when they're playing Newcastle at home. It doesn't really matter. They're always going to win. Not that interested. and it does become that a little bit. Don't get us wrong there. They're almost like sabbaticals, aren't they? It's like go down, reset, detoxify, come back up stronger, which we did both times. But the great question is, if it was to happen again,
I was just going to say, the chances of it happening again, coming straight back up, I don't know. Well, the main key point would probably be how many players would we retain if we went down. If we kept pretty much the same squad, I think we'd have a good chance, not necessarily winning it, but coming back up.
There's no chance of you having the same squad because, or at least not keeping the best players, because if they by definition they're your best players, other clubs in the Premier League will want them, and if clubs in the Premier League want them, they'll get them.
Yeah.
You know, I think I did some research, so the stats might have changed, but I don't think so that much. Last time we went down, I had a look, and since 2004 to 2016, the chances of being automatically promoted straight after relegation in the Premier League were only 1 team in 7 did it, and 2 of them were Newcastle. So that's how good a job Chris Hughton and Rafa Benitez did. You know, a lot of fans at the time or since have said, they always should have got relegated. They spent a load of money, or they had these great teams, and they did. But there's loads of teams that have gone down that have had these great teams and spent a load of money and still haven't managed to come up. Because it's so hard. I think it's the hardest thing to do in football. When you're a team that is used to losing football matches, and as a player and as a fan base and as a club, you accept defeat like we do. And like Steve Bruce in particular almost embraces defeat at times, welcomes it. It's so hard to turn that round in the summer. And you look at Stoke City, spent a fortune, nearly got relegated. Look at Sunderland, relegated again. And even now have struggled to recapture, any kind of forward momentum. And there's loads of I could go through many clubs like that. And that's why the jobs that Rafa and Chris Hughton did were so exceptional, and that's why they're both loved by Newcastle fans still. But also, it's how lucky the club was to have both of them at the time, and I just can't see someone coming in like that again.
No, I don't. I definitely. I mean, in 2009, the first time, I was one of those people saying, "No, we're too good to go down." But I wasn't saying that the second time, and I'll probably never say it again.
Yeah.
Just because since I'd been alive and supporting Newcastle, we'd always been in the top league, so it was just such an alien thing to even think of us going down. But after that, I'm like, no one really is too good to go down. Anyone could have a terrible season.
Well, I think you were almost correct in 2009, because I think Newcastle had the 7th or 8th biggest wage budget in the league and still managed to get. It's almost an impossible job, isn't it, to be that badly managed.
But in a way, the only good thing was it did clear out a lot of the players who were just more. It said a lot about the squad who stayed, maybe took a pay cut temporarily, versus the players who, I remember Charles Nzogby, who was first out the door, he was already gone. So I kind of liked. We had a bit of a clear out in that way and got rid of a few players who I wasn't even much of a fan of anyway. So when we came back, it was kind of like starting again. But at this time, if the whole thing feels a lot more ominous.
No, it doesn't, and. We talked before, both of us think we'll be all right, but we've been proved wrong before, and that's the fear, isn't it? That should we be relegated and it starts to cost the owner money to pay the wages himself, because he doesn't put any money into Newcastle United. And to be fair, you know what? I've always said this: the owner doesn't put any money in, but I don't know what's going on now with COVID. Maybe he is. The club aren't saying either way, but he will want to rid himself of the club quickly if it starts to cost them money to run.
Yeah.
And then you're open. You see Charlton, you see Wigan, Sunderland, the list goes on. They think all their problems are solved with a sale, and then actually things can get much, much worse very, very quickly.
So how much, I was speaking about the fans, how much money are clubs losing due to having no fans on every home game?
Well, I think the revenue for Newcastle is about £30 million a year. Maybe it's a little bit less than that.
Is that just tickets, or is that food and everything?
That's all. Yeah, it's all in there.
Right.
That's all in. Which is a lot of money to lose, and there's no replacing that. And then on top of that, I believe, and I could be wrong, that the Premier League deal for TV is reduced because there's no fans in grounds.
Oh, right.
So they are losing. I mean, Steve Bruce said that they're losing money hand over fist. I think Southampton,
as will all clubs.
Yeah, I mean, Southampton have had to take a £90 million loan out. There's all sorts going on. They did. I think for the first time, actually, this transfer window gone. Again, a lot of people in the media and other supporters would criticise Newcastle fans, too high expectations. I haven't heard anyone criticise Newcastle for not spending money in this transfer window, because fans get it. They understand that there's no money there because we're in a real difficult position.
Yeah. What do you think of Joe Willock then? Think it's a good
Don't know
signing,
much.
or
Don't know much about him. I think the
no?
fact he's played 80 games for Arsenal at 21 is a positive. He seems to have a really good engine, which is something we need, particularly if we're going to play in this new style. I don't like it.
No.
Think that even if it goes really well, which of course I hope it does, you are preparing a rival player, to play for another team against you. And I don't like the fact that Newcastle are now a loan club. They should be buying players, not loaning them. But
and if he does really well, I doubt we could afford to buy him if we wanted him.
yeah, exactly. And I doubt he'd want to come.
The other thing is like I feel bad for him because he's coming again, no fans, which is a huge attraction of this club.
Yeah, it is, and you almost feel like you don't know what sometimes fans in the ground can make a player. They can rise to the occasion, rise to the crowd. So we'll never know with some of them about that until we're back.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what happens in the summer. I mean, even with, I don't know, can you see anytime soon fans being let back in?
No, it'll be next season at the earliest.
Yeah, because until the vaccine's being given to like the general public, once all the priority groups are taken care of, but that's going to take time. So it's a shame, really. It's just it's going to be like it's coming up to like a year since we saw it.
Crazy, isn't it? No, it's mental.
It's gone by so fast as well. I'm glad football has managed to survive it, because that would be. Although you could argue from our point of view, it's probably best that we just rid it off.
Yeah, I know.
But it's our team. We're stuck with them. I wouldn't have it any other way. But I don't know. Like I say, I do have a little bit of hope. What do you think? Do you think the general Newcastle fan is hopeful, or do you think they're a bit more doom and gloom?
No, doom and gloom. I think it doesn't take much to get this fan base excited, and you saw that after the Everton game. But I don't know any fans at all now who think Steve Bruce is doing a good job.
No.
For a little while, you had a few fans defending his record. The only defence I see of him now is that whoever would get would be even worse, and that's no defence at all to say that he's bad, but it might be worse. So yeah, I think Steve Bruce should resign. I think he's a wealthy man. He doesn't need this aggro. He doesn't look well. He doesn't need the stress. And I understand that there's an element of personal pride, an element of him wanting to turn it round. But we are one of the worst teams in the league with one of the better squads, certainly in terms of 8, 9, 10 teams when everyone's fit. And I think if he supports the club like he says he does, he should let someone else have a go at trying to make people's lives a little bit happier, because like you correctly say, there's not much else going on during lockdown, is there? And watching your football team is supposed to be one of the highlights, one of the few bits of escapism, whereas more often than not, it just makes people unhappier.
Yeah, the Everton game, or the game before the Everton game, I was like, do I want to watch this? Do I really want to sacrifice my night for this?
I know fans who've been going 40 years who have just stopped watching. There's not even watching it on the telly, because what's the point? I think there are times, when we play Man City and Arsenal and stuff like that, if I wasn't podcasting about it, I'd probably consider it, because what is the point of watching us play Man City when me and you, Newcastle fans for a long time, we're used to losing. We are used to losing. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but if there's one set of fans at this level anyway who are used to getting beat, it's us. But to go to Man City and not even try, not even attempt to score a goal really, and be happy with it. The manager say taking a lot of positives. That's not. It's almost anti-football.
Yeah, it's like we don't want to. It's like you said before, we'll be all right, but we don't want to be all right, do we? We want to be doing well. We want to play some good football. We've just not had that for such a long time.
No.
But I don't know. I don't think Steve Bruce. I mean, he would probably gain a bit of respect if he just held his hands up and said it hasn't worked out, so I'm going to walk.
Oh, hugely, and it's not like it hasn't been done before. Ruud Gullit did that.
Yeah.
Ruud Gullit just said, I am not doing a good job here. I am going to leave. Could have waited a game or two to be sacked for a couple of million quid. He didn't. He very, very, he's gained a lot of respect from doing that. Still has my respect now for doing it.
Yeah. The other thing I really miss is like the Northeast derbies. I know some fans are like, I'm glad to see them down there, but I actually preferred it when like the Northeast had all 3 clubs in the Premier League. I preferred that.
It's tough, isn't it? Because I do really enjoy Sunderland being in League One, particularly the way they went on for so long, about 6 in a row. And it's like, all right, well done. Where did they get you, lads? But I think, you know what, in an ideal world, which sadly, unless there's some serious change in the way that the game is governed, in an ideal world, I'd love to see Newcastle, Sunderland, Middlesbrough making up the Premier League's top 10. And every time we have to play Sunderland before that, it's always a relegation battle. There's too much riding on the game; it becomes too pressurised. So I think if we were both comfortable in the league and well-run clubs, which seems a long way away from where we are now, both clubs, that would be something to cherish and look forward to. But it was just too stressful for me with the relegation factors, and the fact that we went down and they stayed up. Which didn't help them out in the long term at all.
No,
that was their reaction to that. The reaction of the managers, of the chairman, the owners. Really, really small club, in my opinion, for the way that they conducted themselves. And you get the rivalry. You stay up and your rival goes down. Of course, you're going to be happy, but as usual, it went too far. But yeah, I'm more than happy because we're so bad, not to have to worry about playing them.
Yeah, but that's the Sunderland till I die. That was almost seemed like they were gonna they thought they were gonna come back up like we did. So they're like, oh, let's document it because it'll be really cool. But no one could have predicted that happening.
Well, I predicted this. because
you predicted them going down again.
I didn't predict them definitely going down, but I predicted them being close at the relegation zone in the playoffs.
Wow.
Which because we'd been in the Championship the year before, and because it was such a grind, and because it was so difficult, I knew first of all, I knew they were skint and didn't have any money, so they couldn't do what we did. I mean, bear in mind, we only did what we did because we were able to sell £90 million worth of talent in Wijnaldum, Sissoko, and Townsend.
Yeah, they had to offload all the best players, didn't they?
Yeah, but they didn't have any good players. They had Jordan Pickford, so that was the only player that they sold for any value. But their financial situation in the Premier League was dire. So it wasn't like they were in a good position. And I just knew that the team was... I mean, they got relegated with 20-odd points or something terrible like that. They brought in Simon Grayson as manager, who is a fine League One Championship manager, but was never going to be able to do that job. So I remember they played Derby first game of the season in the Championship because I was on holiday at the time, and I remember watching it in a bar and just turning to my partner at the time and saying, these are in serious trouble here, because Derby weren't a good side and Derby played them off the pitch, and it was like, it's one of the few, I get things wrong all the time. It's one of the few things I'm pleased I got right.
I'm so glad that I haven't done one of those documentaries on Newcastle these last few years. That's the next thing, a headline I'm dreading to see. Is like, oh no, don't come now, don't come and see us now.
No, definitely.
But they are good though. I do like those documentaries. You do get a different side of the teams and the backroom staff and what goes on. You hear the players talking like you never normally get to hear them. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is, and I think the ones that are the best are, like you say, the Sunderland one was particularly the first series was no holds barred, wasn't it? Whereas I watched the Man City one briefly. And it's more like an advert than a documentary.
Yeah.
But that Sunderland one was really like nothing was off camera. There was some awkward moments, and you really did get to see what the life was like in a football club that was imploding.
Yeah, the Leeds one was good as well.
Well, yeah, I've not seen that.
That's really good. I recommend watching that. I mean, they've been so close to coming up so many times. I actually really like Leeds. Who you got? Other team have you got a soft spot for, if any?
Big Glasgow Rangers fan.
All right.
I really support Rangers, my Scottish team. I really keep an eye on them and try and get up there when I can for games, which isn't very often because Newcastle are always playing. And I suppose it's a bit of below Middlesbrough and Sunderland. I like the North East clubs. I work in Blyth, so Blyth Spartans are a team I keep an eye out for. But you want to see all of them do well. You want to see Gateshead, Darlington, Carlisle. Even I know it's not North East, but
that's near where I am now. So I've got a soft spot for Carlisle. Doing well at the moment, actually.
Oh, that's good.
But Gateshead. I like to see other North East teams like that aren't us, like Middlesbrough, Sunderland, Newcastle. It would be nice to see one of them just suddenly come from nowhere.
No, definitely. And I think you can throw York City in there as well. They're about to get a new stadium, so hopefully they'll be mobile.
It's nice to see a club like doing something positive and that involves like spending money. It just doesn't happen these days. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the fallout of this whole COVID thing's going to, worldwide, but particularly in football, is going to last for a long time. And we could see some casualties, I think, as well, club-wise.
Yeah, you hope not, because the amount of money that is swirling around in the game somewhere, you'd hope that. I mean, the Premier League, I think, have said they won't let any football league clubs go bust, so I hope they stick to that.
They have to, really, because the gap between the top and the bottom's just got ridiculous.
Yeah. No, it is, and it's a governance thing, isn't it? And they're supposed to be, when the Conservatives in the last election, they promised a fan-led review into football, and I believe that's not a million miles away. You need that to be profound, though, and to be meaningful. There's a lot of these things look good on paper, and then nothing actually happens. And one of the things I get frustrated sometimes, particularly when I'm talking about trust stuff, and we're doing some fundraising things soon for this kind of stuff. I can't say too much about it at the minute, but people will say everything's impossible. There's too much money, and there is too much money, and things seem impossible, or if not improbable. But every single penny, pretty much, that flows into football clubs, whether it's in the lowest club or the biggest club, whether it's Man United or Macclesfield Town, who went bust, all of that money comes from football supporters. So your money in the Premier League, the TV money's massive, but it's football fans paying for TV subscriptions that pay those wages that money comes in from. And even if it's fans abroad, they still support a club.
Yeah.
If whether you're in the Middle East or Minnesota, if you're watching a football match in the Premier League and you're paying a subscription TV service for it, chances are you support a football team. So that the money is still coming from fans somewhere. So it's almost just, we actually have more power than we realize as supporters, but it's first of all, it's tribalism. People, the Liverpool fan who would never want change because it might help Man United, or the, Sunderland fan and Newcastle fan who do the same. And then it's just kind of a lack of realization that actually the game should exist for us. And I'll give you a good example of why I think that we're moving away from that. It's VAR, and appreciate there'll be people that are listening or watching this who might like VAR, and that's absolutely fine. But I would say VAR, there was no clamour for VAR from football supporters. It wasn't football supporters writing to their clubs, writing to the Premier League, demanding VAR. It was something that was done for television pundits, and it was done for TV executives to make their analysis of the game to I wouldn't even say to fans, to people who might casually watch football rather than support a club, to make it more digestible, because they wanted things to be fair and logical and more streamlined, when in fact part of the beauty of this game, which is the world's most popular, is that it's none of those things. It's unpredictable, it's unfair, things can happen, events can change quickly. VAR, whether you like it or not, I honestly, in the positions that I have, and I know a lot of football fans, I don't know anyone who likes it. And it's not just liking it in its current guise, because you'll get people turn around and say, it just needs tweaks here and there. If you're at a football match, you're in the stand, there is no positive to VAR, because you can't see what's going on. It is taken out of your hands. There's a lack of legitimacy for the referee. You have to have a good Wi-Fi connection, which you don't get in St James's Park, or a 4G connection. And the game almost exists now for not you people in the ground, but for people watching elsewhere. And I say that, and a lot of people watching elsewhere don't like it as well. And I feel like if we just turned around and said, no, enough's enough, every football fan wrote to the Premier League or wrote to the club and said, listen, we don't like this, we're in danger of cancelling our TV subscription. If we were in touch with Sky and BT, it would be gone within a flash. Now, maybe people don't want to do that, and that's fine, but my feeling is they do, but they don't understand the power they have to make these things happen.
That's true. Yeah, I guess when it came in, me and like others must have thought there was a demand for it, but it's just someone's made that decision, so we've just accepted it. I thought it was brought in to like overturn obvious decisions or obvious things that the refs missed. The refs completely missed that. There was an elbow. It was clearly offside. The refs missed it. Fair enough. But I did not expect it to be like micromanaging, or his ears offside. Things like that. It's just ridiculous. And then the waiting. the screen where it's just there's nothing on the screen and no one knows what's going on. You know sometimes it's like 2-3 minutes. I didn't expect any of that. So overall, no, I wouldn't miss it if they removed it and said, oh, it's failed. We tried it, it's failed. I would be happy with that. But at the same time, I do think it could be changed significantly to make it just more streamlined and simple.
I think it definitely could. You're right, but I also think it comes down to the rule book, and there is so much that is open to interpretation. There's so much inconsistency there, and I am fine with inconsistency as a football fan. I don't like referees making bad decisions. I don't like feeling hard done by. And trust me, I've been at plenty of games where I've been hard done by, and you just get over it. You move on. I remember being at Wigan in 2004-5, and Alan Shearer scored a goal, and it was miles behind the line, and it didn't get given. And they brought in goal line technology, and that solved that issue quite well. But it was like, even then, it was like, that's really annoying, but we deserve to get beat.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we didn't deserve to win the game.
Yeah.
And that's all right. And you get on, and I appreciate I'm bringing up a 16-year-old example, but it's a good example to me that everyone just cracked on. The game continued. Everyone still continued supporting the club. There was no need to reinvent the wheel like they've done with VAR. And you see games being refereed differently. Our game the other night against Palace was an awful tackle. Seemed like a red card for all the world. When VAR didn't even check it, they didn't even have a look.
Yeah,
it's almost
those are the times when you think, well, what's VAR for? Why are we not? Yeah. And
what's
sometimes
it for?
It's like when the ref, it's like the is it Stockley Park where they're at, the VAR?
Yeah.
They can't even decide, so they ask the ref to go and have a look on the screen.
Yeah,
and then the ref goes over and he's looking at it 4 times, 5 times. He still can't make his mind up. He's...
And actually, watching it live in real time gives you the best view. I don't care what anyone says, best angle, because when you slow things down and like you correctly say, watch it 5, 6, 7 times, you start seeing things that weren't there. Things look worse, things look better. It's the best view is the live one. I don't have all the answers. What I would like them to do is to scrap it, go away for a couple of years, take feedback. Try it in the odd game. Try it maybe in the League Cup, in the FA Cup. If they've got it in the Champions League final and come back with a far improved version. Because I know lots of people at the minute who they're sick of Newcastle, but they're also sick of VAR.
There's just aspects of it that are just not required. Like I said, if like VAR could like contact the ref and say you've missed this obvious thing, and you go, all right, fair enough, but not for like every time, every little micromanage, every little decision. And it's just slowing the game down as well. Like I've seen some players say where they don't really celebrate as much as they used to because there's chances are it might get disallowed. Yeah,
and it's just not football, is it?
No,
it's not football anymore. That's the chant when fans are in grounds.
No. Well, it's been lovely talking to you. Nice to meet you. Keep doing the True Faith podcast because I love it. It's a little slice of home away from home. So the podcast comes out. Sometimes you do the podcast straight after the match.
Yeah, for a midweek game straight after the match, and for a weekend game. So the game's this Saturday, so it'll be out on Sunday morning.
So you record it because we're playing at like 3:00, aren't we?
Yeah, so we'll record the next day. Yeah,
right.
We'll record the next day for a weekend game.
Right. Oh well, Alex, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll do this again down the line sometime, maybe when we've got fans back or when Steve Bruce is gone, whatever that might be.
Thanks for having me, Marc. Appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.